Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. I'm sorry I got started just a little bit late tonight, and I appreciate your patience. Doug Wetzel, thank you so much for hitting the super chat so early. I really could use a cup of coffee right now. I got a bit of an energy crash just a few minutes ago. So let's get going here with regards to what we can expect, and a collective hello to everybody who's on here. You know, last night, one of the things that I was talking about was the fact that I sort of favored the European model with its more easterly track, and of course the fact that I bet on that particular one, and it winds up that the GFS is going to be the one that's correct in all of this. We'll talk more about that in just a second, but I want to show you, we'll start off with the satellite view here of Tropical Storm Nate, which looks rather disorganized, and that's because the core of the system moved overland over northeastern Nicaragua and into the eastern part of Honduras, and now that center is emerging back into the northwest Caribbean. Now this is going to be very key and very critical for the central Gulf Coast, because ultimately it's going to define, I think, what kind of system we're going to be dealing with here. Is it going to be able to strengthen to a hurricane, category 1, or maybe even something stronger? Or is this going to remain a bit subdued? And the key to this is going to be what it does, how it organizes overnight and during the day on Friday while it's in the northwest Caribbean. Now, conditions are actually quite favorable for strengthening. The ocean water temperatures are extremely warm in that area. They're up at around 31, even 32 degrees Celsius, or mid to upper 80s, and that warm layer goes very deep. We have a little bit of wind shear going on, but that's forecast by all the models to relax tonight. So it looks like it should have ideal conditions for strengthening. The proximity to the land masses makes it a bit problematic, but this is not the biggest of systems, at least in terms of the core circulation. So the whole core may wind up being over water, so that might play into its favor with regards to development. But you can see it here right now. It's not that well organized. There is an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft that's flying in here at 11 o'clock. It should get there at about 11 Eastern time. And the pressures here are low. They are down at around just under 1,000 millibars. So the pressure field here certainly has held together, and the circulation has. So let's see what happens tonight, and how strong does it get during the day tomorrow, because again, that's really going to tell us what what we're going to actually be dealing with. And the Hurricane Center is going to have to do something with regards to hurricane watches or tropical storm watches in short order during the day on Friday, because this is probably going to make landfall sometime on Sunday. That's pretty quick. So they like to put those watches up inside 60 hours. They're already there. So I think they're just going to wait to see what they have when they're dealing with what they're dealing with. And this was going back to what I was saying with the models last night. The GFS was indicating a stronger upper ridge off the southeast coast of the United States, and that is really the difference here. The European was wrong in how it portrayed the ridge as weaker and further east. The ridge is going to be stronger, so this is going to allow Nate to get further to the west. Now, there's a number of complicating factors here also with regards to what Nate is going to strengthen to, because of the fact that you've got this system that's to the north of Nate. And let me just show you here on the wider satellite view. And we'll pull it up to the top. You can see the clouds and showers over Florida and extending out east of the Bahamas. And there's a little bit of a twist that you can see on the satellite going on off the southwest coast of Florida. There's, this is an upper air system. There's a little bit of a surface low reflection there. So you've got a lot of little disturbances in the atmosphere running around, and they're all going to have some kind of impact here in terms of what Nate becomes. And usually when we saw those major hurricanes develop, the atmosphere around it, I guess we could describe it as being fairly clean. There were no other weather systems that were really wreaking havoc or getting in the way. and these systems were able to thrive in their deep tropical environments. But this has a couple of issues with regards to this, with regards to strengthening, and it's how it's going to interact with that system to the north. And some of the models have been sort of playing around with that. That could be the reason why the GFS really doesn't do very much with it in terms of pressure. I mean, it does something with it, but it doesn't really go, crazy with regards to development here. So here's the surface map on the GFS, and you see how that isobar here from Cuba out into the Gulf, and then it comes back around. This is not the tropical system. This is actually that system that's over Florida and the Bahamas and off southwest Florida. There's a weak little low, kind of what we call an inverted trough here, that's in play, and that actually winds up tracking out to the west. And then you see Nate touching the northeastern corner of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's also being depicted by the GFS as a rather small system. It's not that, it doesn't cover a lot of geography, and it doesn't expand in size too much as it moves northward, at least with respect to the core. Now, the other thing that's changed here is the fact that this is going inland. This is, by the way, Sunday morning at 8 a.m. So this is a landfall Saturday night. That's why I think you may see hurricane watches go up tomorrow morning once they have a good idea of where this is going to, how this is going to develop, and it's already, again, inside. At that point, it'll be inside 48 hours for a landfall. But this is not going to be going up the east side of the Appalachians. It'll be going up the west side of the Appalachians. Now, it is going to bring some rain up into the coastal plain and back into Kentucky and Tennessee, and actually some heavy rain in and around the low center. But as it moves northeastward, that remnant low is going to weaken, and so is the area of rain. So I'm kind of wondering just exactly what's going to be left with all of this when it moves through the Mid-Atlantic and northeastern part of the United States. When we look at the precip, the total accumulated precip, let me make sure I have the 24-hour precip. This is a total accumulated precip. Okay, so it does generate some 2-inch plus rainfall amounts. Let's hope that that's the case, because a lot of this area in the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic has gotten very dry in the last 4 weeks. You can see the stripe of 4-inch plus rains being indicated. That pretty much follows along the track. So if you look at where all the heavy rain is, that's really the track of Nate and then the remnant low as it turns northeastward and eventually finds its way up off the New Jersey coast as a weakening system. And the reason why it weakens, by the way, is when we look at the upper air, this is striking with what's changed. Instead of having some kind of deep trough swinging across the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes, you do have a short wave there. You see that dip in the jet stream, that V shape, that trough. Okay, that I'm just going to back this up to the beginning. You can see it there, how it swings by. Nate kind of misses that. All right, and then as Nate moves in, and you can see the jet stream flow that runs from Texas on up through the Great Lakes and into New England, the big upper high is building at the same time. So that's actually weakening it as the remnant feature gets ejected to the northeast. You barely can find it by the time we get into Monday and Monday night. So that's why the system remnant low weakens as it heads towards the east coast, because this big upper high is going to be building in the eastern part of the United States again. So it's amazing that this ridge in the east that was barely present through the summer months has suddenly reared its ugly head here during the last half of September and this very first part of October. I want to take a look also at the weather around the country, because we do have a few other things that are going on, particularly in the west, and I'm going to back this up just a little bit. So you've got, Nate, there's rain that's moving through the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley. So there's Nate, comes inland near New Orleans on Sunday morning. And you also have out in the west low pressure that develops in Colorado in the cold air with a trough that's swinging through there, and it produces actually some snow up through the central Rockies. And in fact, when we look at the total snowfall, there's some pretty substantial snows that are being indicated. Probably snow in Denver with all of this. But most of the northern and central Rockies are going to be getting some snow in the late in the weekend and the first part of next week. So little bits of wintertime starting to show up in part. It already has shown up in the west when they went to that deep trough in the west ridge in the east pattern. And then going forward later next week, we'll get another round of rain with a front. And then it looks like weather fronts will be coming through, bringing shots of cooler air every few days, every 3 or 4 days. A more important storm comes out of the plains as we move toward the latter part of the forecast period, because now we're into, I believe that's October 21st, Saturday, October 21st. A colder pattern begins to develop, but that's so deep in the long range, I really have to, question the validity of that. Now, I'll show you what the hurricane tracking models are doing with all this, because they've gotten tightly clustered very early, and they continue to be tightly clustered, and you can see that almost all of them take Nate inland in southeast Louisiana, a couple of them swinging out a little bit further to the east. This particular model cycle late this afternoon was probably a shade further east than the prior runs, but I think that zeroing in on southeastern Louisiana now is where this is going to wind up. And then the track, of course, kind of arcs up into the Tennessee and Ohio Valley and then turns eastward. But again, by the time it gets out of West Virginia and heads toward Pennsylvania and New Jersey, the remnant low is going to be rather weak, and you're going to see this weakening area of rain coming eastward. Hopefully enough to produce an inch or two of rain to places that need it. But this is a different scenario, obviously, from what we had a couple of days ago. If you took this low up into the panhandle of Florida and then brought it up the Appalachians because of a deeper jet stream to the north and west, then you could have wound up with some significant rain and maybe even some wind issues in some areas. The European highlighted that yesterday at one point, yesterday afternoon. But again, that does not appear to me at this stage of the game that we have to worry about that. So it seems pretty straightforward. Again, the critical element for me in this development phase that we're going to see tonight and on Friday is, what does it do when the whole core emerges out into the Northwest Caribbean, which is it's doing so now? Is it going to strengthen? Is it going to organize rather quickly? You know what? I can even pull up. Let me pull up the intensity guidance, because that was kind of interesting this afternoon. There are some models that are actually quite bullish with regards to the development here. So hopefully it's up there somewhere. And where are you? I gotta find it, otherwise I gotta start all over here. Hang on. No. Is it hiding? Sometimes when I put these maps up, they hide behind the other ones, and apparently this one is not hiding. So let me try this again. And just bear with me, everybody. Just take me 1 second. All right. This is what happens when I decide to do things on the fly, and for some reason it doesn't want to load. Well, I'll just describe it to you anyway. The intensity guidance, most of the models keep this as a tropical storm, but there are some that bring it up to category 1 and 2, and there are actually a couple of them. One model brings it up to a category 3, almost a category 4 hurricane before landfall, but that's just one model. One brings it to a 3, two of them, one brings it to a 3, one brings it to a 2, one brings it to a category 1, and the rest of them keep it as a tropical storm. I just wonder, because of the fact that there's just so much going on in the upper atmosphere there and in the lower atmosphere, that we're not going to see this strengthen much beyond a Category 1 hurricane. I think that to me, that looks like the worst case scenario at this point. But this has been the season where they have tried very hard. They haven't had to try very hard to become Categories 3, 4, and 5. So if this winds up outperforming what the models are indicating, do not at all be surprised. So folks that you might be watching from southeastern Louisiana, I worked in New Orleans. I know very well. I still actually have a place in just outside of New Orleans, and I can certainly understand the sensitivity with regards to Katrina. That is your generational storm that you will remember for a long, long time to come, and everything since has been measured against that. And it's very important that you just keep, certainly pay attention to all this. Let's hope that it's the least case scenario and not the worst case scenario, that it just winds up being a strong tropical storm or maybe a Category 1 hurricane at worst. And, it can be formidable but manageable, but it doesn't strengthen anything beyond that. So let me just touch on your comments real quick. Let's, first of all, again, collective hi to everyone. I know I usually like to say hello to everybody individually, but some nights it doesn't really work that well. This is one of those nights. David Schwartz, absolutely. Nate is very disorganized at this point because of the impacts of Nicaragua and Honduras. So that's why I'm saying when it goes into that northeastern Caribbean, the northwestern Caribbean tonight, it's going to be key to see what kind of strengthening we're going to have between now and tomorrow night. Wayne McDonald, the models show the system heading to the Maritimes, and this afternoon's GFS showed it strengthening as it enters the Maritimes. What does that mean for the Maritimes? All right. Well, at that point, what we have is the remnant low basically getting out of that ridge position. So whatever's left is able to strengthen a bit. And when we look at the late afternoon run of the GFS, yeah, the remnant low, actually the remnant low on the late afternoon GFS really doesn't strengthen very much at all until it gets way out southeast of Greenland. So if that upper ridge really goes to work on this, on the remnant low, I don't know how much of it is, how much is going to be left for it to work on. So you might not have that much to worry about there. Andrew, I know the heat's driving you crazy. I know. But it'll be cold and wintry soon enough, I promise. Okay. Let's see. I'm just trying to get. I'm going through all your comments all here all at once, so it's a little bit. Yeah, Cullen. Yes, I usually refer to the Weather Channel as the onion of weather. Because sometimes it's just some of the. That they do what they do, and I do what I do, and we'll just leave it at that. Okay, I don't want to say nasty things. Let's see. Ray Pickles, tomorrow night, get some rain in Nova Scotia if it tracks north as it curves into the Atlantic. You might get some rain out of it, Ray, but I don't know how much you're really going to get out of it. It really doesn't look all that potent by the time the ridge gets done with it. As it builds and that short wave just weakens, you're going to have a very, rather weak remnant low left. It might gel up a little bit as it goes by, but it's not going to be anything that you certainly can't handle. Let's see. Andrew, I know Andrew Nagy really wants it to get cold in a hurry. Cullen, getting some rain in northwest Jersey this evening. Yeah, we've got this little batch of showers going by. It's amazing how dry it's been since the beginning of September. If I remember correctly, from the last time we got anything of consequence was with the remnants of Harvey, and that wasn't actually too much. And that's been it. I mean, it's hardly rained since then. But September, October for this part of the country, for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. One of the it's the driest period of the year, so it's sort of playing to form. Cynthia Guignardis was on my Facebook Live, and now she's on my YouTube live, and hello back to you. Let's see. Awesome Gamer, you know, expecting a Cat 3 from this. Well, again, if it's going to do it, it's going to have to strengthen in a hurry in the Northwest Caribbean and then keep strengthening in the Gulf of Mexico. So there are going to be some issues that it's going to have to fight. We'll have to wait and see on that. And this is also the other thing that's changed too, by the way, is the fact that this is moving pretty fast. Once we get through tomorrow, this thing is going to be moving at a fairly quick clip. The European, if you remember from yesterday, really didn't have it making landfall until Sunday night or early Monday morning. Now we're talking about landfall late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. So, you know, that's a big difference. The upper air changing with that big upper high building is changing everything in terms of the whole profile of how this thing is behaving. I'm sorry, Jeanette Riddle, the poor spelling, but I can't see what exactly you spelled, so I'm going to look back. WERY. I'm trying to find your thread. I'm sorry, Jeanette. Just why don't you rewrite your point of your question so that I can see it? Oh, here in Tennessee, I found it. It does look like Nate might bring some rain as we need it now. Yeah, you saw on that rainfall map that I put up that, you know, there's going to be a stripe of 2 to 4 inch rains with this or more as the remnant low goes by. So you will get some rain out of that. You certainly will do much better, I think, than areas north and east of you. Let's see. The Yanks are losing. The Patriots are winning. So we've gone to sports. Tornado Point, Opal formed the same way. Yeah, but you got to remember, it's, you know, there are differences with these storms. The only thing that gives me a little pause is the fact that, you know, we have had a season with all these major hurricanes that we've had. So if, you know what, if this does wind up becoming something major or close to a major, it wouldn't shock me. But I don't expect that to happen. Remembering Maria strengthening to a Cat 5 in 24 hours. Again, you know, that was Maria had the environment, Irma had the environment to become a Category 5. This one, I don't think has that kind of environment. So I'm not expecting that to happen. But then again, I didn't expect it to go into the central Gulf Coast either. As it's winding up heading over to Florida. All right, folks, I'm going to have to end it here because I have a show to do in a few minutes. I'm going to, you know, we'll be updating everything tomorrow. If the Hurricane Center does put up watches tomorrow morning, I'll do a morning live stream as well as one tomorrow night, and we'll keep you covered over the weekend with everything that's going on. Sunday I'm going fishing with my buddies for the day, so I may be a little lax in posting, but you can certainly check out the latest goings on my website, meteorologistjoecioffi.com. Doug Wetzel, thank you again for hitting Super Chat tonight. That cup of coffee is so needed at this point. I'm really not sure why. I just got suddenly this wave of tiredness, but it does happen every once in a while. All right, so let's see what happens tonight with Nate as it moves into the Northwest Caribbean. And then I think, you know, by this time tomorrow, we'll have probably a better idea of what exactly we're going to be dealing with when it moves into the Gulf of Mexico and heading for southeastern Louisiana. Have a great Thursday evening, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.